Check, check, 1, 2, hey, hey, hey. I'm Kyle Lamont, host of ConcertCast, a rockumentary podcast network exploring concert culture. And I appreciate you for pushing play on this episode. Hello, welcome. This episode is all about concert photography with Scott Newton, the resident photographer at Austin City Limits, known as ACL. At the time of our conversation, his photos were unavailable for purchase due to copyright restrictions, but guess what? That has changed. To celebrate ACL's 50th anniversary, Stephen Walker of Modern Rocks Gallery, in collaboration with Austin PBS, has curated 50 iconic prints from Newton's archive. From Ray Charles to Dolly Parton and some super incredible ones of Willie Nelson, these high-quality prints capture music history in stunning detail. Check out the ACL Heritage Collection, exclusively available at Modern Rocks Gallery in East Austin or online at modernrocksgallery.com. Now, let's get into the stories behind some of these images, plus Scott's philosophy on concert photography. Growing up, I had posters of rock stars taped to my wall. Iconic pictures of both living and dead musicians like Robert Plant, Gwen Stefani, Bob Marley, Janis Joplin, and Usher, all caught in sonic ascension. I picked these posters out at record stores or at the mall at Spencer's Gifts, not because I wanted to be a musician per se, but because of the imagery itself. I loved how it felt like they were sharing a secret with me. And some nights, while lying in bed in the glow of my nightlight, I would fall asleep by fixating on the details of each image, like how blue Joplin's turquoise bracelets were, or the texture of Marley's crocheted Rasta cap, and the beads of sweat dripping into Robert Plant's belly button. Despite my young age, I knew that in every image something deeper was being communicated. But what? It wasn't until I started going to concerts every night while living in New York City that I began to really take notice of the photographers in the pit. And it was at this time that it clicked for me that these were the people catching and relaying the secrets. Much like the musicians on stage, the photographers also had a unique rhythm to their movements, and some of them even had a smile on their face. And as a novice photographer at the time, I was curious to know how they were able to connect with artists both live on stage and also candids. How did they trigger emotions that transcend time in just a fraction of a second? Take, for instance, the black and white photo of Willie Nelson, who's looking at you from his driver's side window, donning a top hat and a pensive grin.
That was at Willie World, which is Perdinelli's recording studio, 1983. He had just finished. He was driving away, and he stopped to talk to us. And I asked him, I said, "Can I take your picture?"
Or the one of Ray Charles, who's throttling out of his seat like a rocket.
I try to isolate and separate a performer in their context in such a way that if I do it correctly, you can hear the music. Well, all right, I believe is what he was thinking at that very moment. When I'm shooting as a photographer, I'm trying to define the divine because I feel that they're in the thrall of something that's not them, that's bigger than them. And so my point when I'm shooting is to try to reveal that.
Meet Scott Newton, famed concert photographer and resident photo documentarian at Austin City Limits, the longest-running music series in American television history, and our guest of this episode of ConcertCast. Hi, I'm Kyle Lamont, your host, and our conversation will take you beyond light and composition and into the outer limits of creation as we talk about his foray into the medium, hear his philosophy on music and on the art of photography, and get the backstory on how he landed one of the most rewarding gigs in live music.
I'll let you take your pictures, yeah. Don't let me rush you. What? Don't let me rush you. I'll let you take your pictures. Okay. And that's a good angle for seating, too.
I'm on the floor of the Moody Theater, a state-of-the-art music venue in downtown Austin where the infamous TV show Austin City Limits is filmed for a daytime tour of the venue.
If 11,000 people were standing on the floor and they jumped up and down, you could actually feel that floor moving because it is floating.
We're then taken backstage where we walk by intricate lighting sconces.
So it's one of those things that artists like to touch or rub right before they go on stage.
And into the green rooms where our delightful guide tells us about Dave Chappelle's interesting request.
Asked for all red lights in these dressing rooms, so the hospitality team changed out all of these lights to red. Even the ones in the refrigerator. You see, these are Scott Newton pictures on the walls over here.
But what stands out to me the most are the bold, black and white concert photos of past performers.
Scott Newton has been our photographer for the show on PBS since 1974.
We then walk up to the mezzanine floor where there's a larger-than-life photo gallery of more emotionally provoking work made by him. While looking at the photos, I found myself more curious about the person behind the lens. So after the tour, I walked down the street to the Austin Public Library to absorb the amazing architecture there and do a little research/internet sleuthing on Scott Newton. We're going to hear more about his life from Scott directly in this episode, but the last piece of info that I came across was his phone number. So I sought out a private conference room on the 3rd floor and called him up. Before I knew it, I was in a taxi riding through a winter rainstorm to his house for tea and conversation. The car pulls up to an urban sanctuary, and I couldn't see his house from the sidewalk, but a stone path through the garden drew me in. I knock on the door, and Scott greets me with a warm smile. He has a red plaid shirt on, a beard white as snow, and long hair bunched back into a ponytail. And my pug person heart skips a beat. You do not have a pug.
I have a pug, yeah. The pug's name is Sluggo.
Needless to say, our mutual adoration for pugs makes for a terrific icebreaker. Do you take pictures of your dogs?
Yeah, sure. All the time, especially in walks with Sluggo. He's very jaunty. He has a jaunty attitude, and he's not afraid of anything. He's very admirable. I really love my pug.
And without hesitation, we go right for the spiritual jugular, and our conversation transitions from pug snorts to music mythology.
What I like about music is that it touches the divine. There's a supernatural aspect to it. Human being who had muses talk to him was called a musician. So if you were a musician or lyrical poet was to play and you were to congratulate them on a fine performance, they would really mean it when they say, it's not me, it's my muse. Musicians were thought to be people who had access to the divine, essentially, on some level. We don't see it that way. Our culture doesn't, but I do, and that's what I shoot. Sometimes it's almost indescribable, or certainly inscrutable, trying to find that point of divine contact. We don't go to church much anymore as a culture, but we sure go hear music, and it's taking the same place. We're trying to touch that larger thing. So that's how I see music. It's just music's life. That's all. It's the sound of living spirit.
His words recall a memory of mine of when I received my first photo pass at a concert, and while in the pit, focusing on a musician with my zoom lens, there was something beyond the image in my viewfinder. I love taking photos at concerts, and I felt something different, and I captured something different. I pause, choked up thinking about how moving that concert moment was for me. And Scott, well, he was able to complete my thought.
Tangible that you could convey. And that's what essentially art is. It's consciousness made into something tangible. And so, you feel it when you're there. You're there in person. You feel a fine performance. You feel the spiritual aspect of it. It's something beyond ordinary and mundane. And so it was touching you. It was touching your, the spiritual part of you too. I'm very emotional. When I've shot a good shot, the hair stands up the back of my neck, and I know it.
And because the connection can be so vulnerable and intimate, I had to know. Do you like to brief or talk to an artist before their set, just so that you two are comfortable with each other?
I'm a performance portraiturist. Rarely do I get to talk to them or know them or talk to them. The only time I talk to them is if they see me shooting. They may or may not play to me. Some do. Willie does, for example. He looks right in the camera and he'll give you everything he's got. He'll give you essentially his soul. And as a photographer who understands that's what you're doing, is trying to capture that spiritual aspect, somebody like that gives it to you, you know what to do with it.
Scott grew up on an Air Force base and lived in 22 different countries. And one of the perks was seeing all the music that Bob Hope brought with him on tour. He saw so much music that it's hard for Scott to identify what his first ever concert was. It could be the Supremes or maybe Frank Sinatra. He's not quite sure. But what he does distinctly remember is seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. That performance cemented his love for the band, for music, and for John Lennon.
He was the leader of my parade. And he was a leader of a lot of our parades. And I just have never really gotten over the fact that he was killed.
Another formative musical moment for Scott was when he saw the Rolling Stones play in Fort Worth, Texas in 1972, where
suddenly you had real rock. You had real art, it was in front of you. It was pertinent. It was emotional. It was real. It was tangible. That's what made me decide I could make a living being a concert photographer. People were buying pictures of Mick Jagger and, Rolling Stones from me. And the light bulb went on over my head. And this English major and ancient Greek minor just never did anything else. It's what I like to do. And so I've had a good life doing this.
Then came a job as a resident photographer at the Austin Opera House, which was a venue opened by Willie Nelson.
And I could just come and go in all the dressing rooms as much as I wanted. I was in there, and you had to patrol yourself. You didn't want to shoot anybody, photograph anybody, doing cocaine, or you didn't want to, photograph certain things that would get you in trouble or anything like that. But other than that, you just have at it.
When I ask if there are any memorable backstage stories he could share, he says,
there's just funny stories of people doing funny stuff. What can you say? They're involved. And, I just don't want to be the guy who tells tales, apocryphal tales. I'd rather be a little bit more reserved than that, and not kiss and tell kind of thing.
Duly noted.
Okay.
You can't blame me for asking.
I can't blame you for asking.
His Austin City Limits story starts in the late 70s at the original studio on the UT campus, where his longtime friend, Willie Nelson, was the first to play.
And we were on PBS, which made it work, because there's no dog food commercials in between the songs. You can't do an hour-long music show with dog food commercials between songs. It just doesn't work. So because we have that platform, it's worked for us. And so it's kept going, and I've had that privileged spot of being the guy that shoots still photographs for the program.
Austin City Limits, known as ACL, has, quote, promoted artists on the fringes and introduced the world to superstars, unquote. From Kendrick Lamar to Bonnie Raitt, this show has grown to be a major platform for bands and has helped make Austin a musical mecca. And around 2007, producers saw the need to scale up and bring the experience to a much bigger audience.
So anyway, Stratus, a local company, development company, came up with the idea of marrying a W hotel with a venue, and they built it for us, essentially. I wasn't in on the designing of it, but, we were. Terry was, Jeff was.
He's referring to Terry Lacona, who's been the producer of ACL since 1978, and he's also a co-producer of the Grammy Awards show.
He's our superstar behind the scenes, in my opinion. He's the one that makes everything happen. He's got a great personality as far as getting people together and working in the same direction. He's salt of the earth, and I'm totally loyal to Terry Lacona.
And Jeff Peterson is another longtime producer of the show, who also happens to produce major music programs for HBO and documentary specials for PBS.
A lot of us we helped design the perfect concert venue, and I believe it is. And standing in there, I've heard that there's no seat farther than 65 feet from the center mic. That sounds right. There's only 2 seats in the whole place, and there's 27. It holds 2,700 full that are behind a pillar. And it's easy to look around. So I'm saying is there's not a bad seat in the place. So now, instead of holding, 300 or 250 audience members, now we have a seating capacity of 2,700. So now we have critical mass. So if somebody's up there doing a great show, you hear the roar.
What is your spiritual take on a venue, a place where so many people gather to see live music? And how would you describe just the essence of a music venue?
Music is spirit that you can hear. So all of that melds together and breaks down all of us from being individual into being that whole group music thing that happens. To me, we all touch the larger thing together. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it viable. That's what makes us want to do it. And the larger thing, includes a lot of spiritual aspect. I don't think many people think about that. They just think about what a great time they're having, which is as well as it should be. Because like I already said, we don't go to church so much, but we do go hear music these days in this culture. The Moody is a great indoor venue. It's been designed roughly, with the series of balconies that it has wrapped around a stage. It reminds me of the old Globe Theater, which was, you put actors out there on a thrust and not just a proscenium where you've got, you're looking at something 180 degrees across, where you can do it semi in the round, and that circular thing helps facilitate the thing that music does, which is essentially open our souls. you know?
Out of the hundreds and hundreds of bands who have performed, there are a few that just haven't performed yet. Here's why.
So there's certain people that you're just not going to make them more famous. And if their manager doesn't see the monetary value in it, they've already got enough exposure. Oh, I suppose it's that too big thing. We're just never going to quite get that whale landed, you know? So we haven't gotten McCartney, although their people are talking to Terry. But anyway, I don't know if I'll ever get to shoot Paul McCartney. That's my white whale. So we haven't shot Springsteen either. But we're down to just a few bands that we haven't gotten. U2, haven't gotten them, but just a few. Everybody else, they see the value of coming laying down their best stuff. And they usually come in there with some apprehension. Some of these musicians really get nervous when they come there. I mean, this is their big deal. Millions of people are going to see that show. And they treat it that way. They treat it seriously.
One of the most interesting parts and features about the ACL concert experience is that it's being recorded for TV, which means that there are dozens of cameras and operators positioned around the stage and venue. And what I love most about the production value of the show is that the technique and the style is clean, simple, and timeless. There's nothing flashy or trendy about their editing choices. The producers have done a brilliant job of honoring the performance in its purest form.
We try not to have the process intrude upon the musicians and their gig, their act, the thing that they do. That works well for us.
And the media time capsule of musical magic is magnificent. Let's just say it's easy to spend about an hour or more on their YouTube channel.
Austin City Limits, we're bringing through the very best musicians of the world, really, these days. And it's the place where everybody goes to show their A game. And so we're laying down an anthology of the very best the culture has to offer.
And because it's being recorded for TV, the artists have liberty to redo songs. Well, kinda.
Common, he redid, he did one song. He was starting on, I think, the fourth time. And the audience rebelled finally. But it happens. I mean, when you're playing to a live audience, you can only do it so many times before they get impatient. So there's that limitation. The audience has a mind of its own. And we like that. We want the audience to, respond naturally. And so we try to remove the obvious problem of having cameras right there in front of everybody on the stage. We try to make them as invisible as possible by not intruding and making the show the artist's show and have them do their own.
We have your Austin City Limits photography book in front of us. Can we just blindly open it up and see what it is? And then we'll just dive into the backstory. And I'm flipping. I'm going to just flip. I'm going to flip. And then we stop on an image that opens up a channel of reflection. It's of a legendary troubadour, a sensational singer-songwriter who's on stage mid-song with eyes closed. But what speaks to me most about the photo is how he's holding the microphone cord.
That's the best, best live performance that I've ever shot was the Leonard Cohen first taping. I think it was season 14. And he made this shot here, the album cover of Cohen Live in 1985. So that's one of my great victories that I love is the fact that a shot that I took there on City Limits got on one of Leonard Cohen's covers.
What made this the perfect photo for you?
Well, it's deep. It's profound. It's not an active shot. So you've got a yin-yang going on in everything in life, but in music especially, and especially visually. There's the outward thing, the big smile, the exuberant thing. Well, that's the yang. And then the yin is the receptive, the inside, the contemplative. Well, this is a yin shot. This is a contemplative shot. And so, by definition, it's not going to be splashy. It's not going to be spectacular. But all the energy, all that spiritual energy is right there in those forms. I think it's there. And he agreed because he saw the shot in a newspaper and called me and asked me if he could use it for his album cover. So he agreed as well. So this shot conveys the spirit of Leonard Cohen, and it's very understated, just kind of like he is. It's one of my favorite images that I've ever shot.
From the art of the capture to tech and tips, we now enter into a mini masterclass with Scott Newton. What's your lens of choice?
Nikon 2.8 zooms. The wide one is a 20 to 70, I believe, and the long one is a 70 to 200. FX, of course, is the size of the sensor. But when I need to go longer, I can use a smaller sensor. An old D300 will give that 200 to 300. I love my Nikons. I'm now shooting with two D750s digital cameras, which are the best cameras I've ever had. They make more expensive cameras, but these are perfect. They're just wonderful. The only problem with them is You can shoot too much.
Concert photographers should have thick skin, especially in the pit.
If you can't do mosh pit, you really can't be a concert photographer because, you're going to get hit. Your equipment's going to get screwed with. You're going to get hit up the side of the head by somebody you don't know. All that stuff's going to happen. But, that's what you got to do if you want to get the shots.
Be yourself around musicians.
You got to act normal. And if you want them to act normal, well, they are normal. In my opinion, they are normal. They're just people who have access to the muse. That's how I see it. I see these as just people that are favored by, circumstance or luck, really. A lot of them have maximized it.
And when it comes to oh shit moments where life sends you a camera curveball in the middle of a performance,
you got to deal. And whether or not you panic is part of, the definition of who you are. So keeping cool in times of stress, when somebody's paid you to do really well and things are going really wrong, well, that's when you show your shit. That's when you prove you're a photographer. You're only as good as your last shoot in this business. Just keep that in mind. And if you blow a shoot, well, you better atone. You better come up with a whole bunch of shoots to make you forget you blew one. I'll talk more about equipment if you like, but you can probably tell I'm into the philosophy of the thing, of what it is I'm actually doing. All this equipment, to me, is just the way you get there.
So let's get into it.
You practice seeing without the box in front of your face. You practice telling the story without a camera there, so that when you do put the camera there, it's just all art. You know how to look, you know how to juxtapose, you know how to compose, you know how to do the thing that you were born to do. What a photographer does is he sees the truth of that moment and he conveys it in concrete form where others can see it as well. That's what a photographer does. That's the goal. That's the job description.
Aesthetically,
I try to isolate and separate a performer in their context in such a way that if I do it correctly, you can hear the music. Just shoot a lot and act like each one of them is the only one you'll get to shoot. That's the key.
And by looking at the iconic photo of Ray Charles, he helps to better describe what he means.
Okay. As a performance photographer, there's two things that are in my mind always. One is the form that's inherent in the shot. Try to pare it down. Try to get the form so it's apparent. So right there, the form is, he's bending over backwards. The music's coming out. It's an exaltation. You can literally see the form. And the other thing is try to find the decisive moment. Try to find the decisive moment where the form shines the brightest. You get those things together, you got a shot. You got a shot that conveys, if you do it correctly. And that shot, that conveyed correctly.
And when we study his image of Willie Nelson, the famous one that he shot of Willie sitting in a truck looking out his window, it's clean, it's relatable, right. And he looks like a real person. He doesn't look like that Willie Nelson that we think of on the stage.
It's just him as a human being, with the spirit flowing through him, which is what I try to do with every shot. That's my goal for every shot, really. So you can see the man's spirit, see the core of who he is. That's my goal. And of course, spirit is invisible, so you have to infer it.
And for photographers or artists or entrepreneurs who can get caught in the web of comparison, especially when scrolling through our social media feeds, who might also struggle with finding the truth and authenticity in their work or trusting the reasons for why they create, there are deeper principles at play. What's your advice to creatives?
Stay positive. Just keep doing it. It's one foot in front of the other. That's how you do it. You just can't let it get to you. Everybody else is out there doubting too. Nobody has your heart. Nobody has your soul. Nobody's you. You have a unique perspective. Don't compare yourself. And don't ever focus on lack. Don't ever focus on what you're lacking. Focus on what you can accomplish. The lack thing, that's a dead end. It's a blind alley. I can't do this because other people are better. Yeah. Fuck that. You're you're your own person, you're a unique person. I mean, this is all stuff that you've heard from the time you were born. But the fact is, it's true. Just have faith in yourself.
And to anyone who's listening who might feel blocked in their life or fearful,
the future is a distillation of what we're doing now. If you want to change your future, change your vibration in the now. Become positive. You get in a rhythm, you get in a pattern where you feel the return. It's not an instant karma, but it's close. You're laying down there, you're doing the right stuff, and you start getting rewarded on the edges. It's never direct. It's almost always on the edges. So you just got to keep working at it. Spirit doesn't know time. Spirit can see into the future. So there's a part of you, it's not your conscious part, but it's the intuitive part. And it sees, it apprehends what the future can be. It will guide you. It will deflect you along the proper course. So that you've lived a while and you look back, how the hell did that happen? It was because your spirit was coaxing you to the place you needed to be to have the lessons that you need unfold for you. So that's how life works, in my opinion. Just have the strength and courage of your convictions and in your own consciousness. You are gifted that consciousness. It touches God, that consciousness. That's where we touch. That place in the very center where, you're talking to yourself, that's the place where God is too. You'll draw to yourself the lesson you need, always, every time. There are no exceptions. It sounds like nebulous bullshit, but it really isn't. It works. You get the patterns going, and it starts rewarding you on the edges. All I know is it seems to work.
I'm glad I have this recorded because I'm going to push play when I need a little pep talk.
Good. I hope so. Hope you do. You could call me too if you want. I'll give you a pep talk on the phone.
I would like that. You could, yes. I mean, this is a podcast in itself. It's just pep talks with Scott.
Well, I can do that. I'm happy to share the things that I've uncovered.
In fact, I've made a bonus episode with more from Scott on this subject. Listen to Principles and Philosophy for Photographers and Creatives at the conclusion of this episode. We mosey from his living room into his office to glance into his digital photo archive. He tells me he has over 28 terabytes of content.
Just shot Willie the other day. He played for an hour and a half. I shot over 2,000 shots.
So what is your ISO at right now? Because it's freaking night.
2,500. I'm probably shooting at 160th at 2.8. That's my guess. It might be a 200th at 2.8. I get all excited. Now that's beautiful to me. It's just marvelous. The lighting is so marvelous. That's his sister, Bobby. So there's a nice 2-shot there. It's not an accident. There's never an accident when you're a still photographer. Everything's placed. Everything's on purpose. That's the famous Willie smile. These are the circles of confusion you get when you use a 2.8 lens. And that's our look.
And the more we scan, the more I start to detect his signature style, which Scott explains to me here.
Is to try to isolate as simply as possible, to condense the form down into something that jumps right off the page that you can hear if I do it correctly. You feel the warmth of the music, and there is this energy circuit right in the middle. It's totally invisible. When existence conveys to you the underlying invisible essence of the thing, and you push the button at that moment so you can show everybody else, that's what photography is. That's a great shot. All these are really good, or they wouldn't be left in the call. He's 85 now. His voice is a lot weaker than it used to be, but he's still got all the power of spirit that he had. That's what I see.
He's looking right at you.
Yeah, he is. He's giving it to me. We go back. He does that for me. And then I've got lights to play with, so it just becomes a composition exercise for me. There's so many elements. That's good too, but when I get to this next one here, I'll show you. I consider that to be one of the best shots I've ever taken of him.
Why is that?
The eye contact and the way he tilts his head. Like somebody, when they tilt their head when they're looking at you, it's like they're questioning something. And I just love all this wrinkled skin. It talks about how many years of living he's got behind him. And he's getting ready to throw these are all great. Even my own photography wipes me out when I see some of these. These are all great.
You nailed that last shot there. That was beautiful.
Thanks.
Slugger the pug is snoring, the rain is pattering, and we take a trip to the 70s.
So I'm going to flash through these. You'll get an idea. Oh, there's some nice ones there. This is one of my favorite. There's some nice ones. I'll show you these. Oh, yeah. Get back to this. Another one of my favorites. I shot that with film probably 50 years ago. There's a lot of dead people in these things. I've been around a long time. There's Waylon. He's dead. I like these Waylon shots. I love that impermanence of a smoke ring. Talks about the impermanence of music. Oh, this is one of my very favorite shots. Well, here's something for you. The shot that Austin skyline is based on, I took. How about that? That's probably my most widely seen photograph, or at least derivative.
He's talking about the infamous backdrop that every artist performs in front of on the Austin City Limits stage. Skyscrapers are twinkling, and the Capitol Dome is commanding yet cordial.
I went and took that picture from St. Edward's Hill, and they gave it to the set designer, and she designed the set around it.
That is definitely, I would say, a legacy.
Yeah, that's a legacy.
A legacy shot. That's what that is.
Yeah, I have to agree. And so I feel like I'm working for posterity, to be honest with you. I'm shooting for someday this stuff will way outlive me, and it may outlive the show. These pictures will always be, they're immortal. So, and I'm the one that, these retinas get to see it first. So I'm in a privileged position, which I really love. But I love the gig that I've got. I love doing what I do.
But after looking through a lot of images with him, I couldn't help but notice, I think we're missing some pug portraits. It's been really cool to talk to you because you just have a beautiful way of articulating photography that I've never heard before. And that is just connects with me too, because that's what I love about photography is like seeing something deeper. And so that's cool that you've been saying it better than I've ever said it. So well, thank you.
Everything. I didn't say anything that I don't believe. So, or it was a lie. So I'm trying to think, did I?
Before I leave, I snap a selfie with Scott and Slugger. Well, I really appreciate your time. Honestly, that was fun.
Well, I'm glad I got to give you a pep talk too.
And while standing in the doorway, looking out through the misty garden, Scott gifts me with an answer that I've been seeking from when I used to study those rock stars on my teenage bedroom wall.
There's a cyclical nature to everything. You know, everything there's a season. And the trick is to be a photographer is to figure out when the truth has changed. When existence, the things that exist, show you, convey to you the underlying spiritual essence, then that's a good shot. If you push your button when that's happening, that's a good shot. But the job of a photographer is to discern the truth and reveal it. Really simple.
Simple.
It's right out of the instruction manual.
To purchase an iconic Scott Newton print from the Austin City Limits Heritage Collection, visit modernrocksgallery.com. And to hear more podcasts exploring concert culture, go to concertcast.live. And wow, would I so appreciate you if you could please rate, review, and subscribe to concertcast.live. It would mean so much. And don't forget to share this episode with your live music loving friends. This has been a production of Good to Go Studios. Written, produced, and recorded by yours truly, me, Kyle Lamont, and my editor and engineer is Pete McGill. Special thanks to Heidi Stanton-Drew, Mark Tuckashan, Scott Newton, and Stephen Walker. And thank you for listening.